Welcome to the GSMC Business News Podcast, the show dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning business, technology, and the stock market. Get a head start on the day as we keep you updated on the latest goings-on Wall Street, money, jobs, and technology. If you're looking for a podcast to keep you informed and ahead of the game in business, the GSMC Business News Podcast has you covered. Welcome to the GSMC Business News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and I am happy to be with you on this Thursday. I hope that you are doing well in these times of craziness. I hope that you are staying healthy, staying safe, and if you are one of those essential people that has to continue going to work, thank you so very much for helping us to continue to survive and maintain in this time of coronavirus. I greatly appreciate the doctors, the nurses, the first responders out there saving lives, but also the grocery store workers, the truck drivers, the delivery people, the janitors who are cleaning everything for us. And I am just so very grateful. If you are working from home, I hope that's going well. If you are homeschooling currently, I hope that you are taking lots of time to breathe and that your children are taking time to have some mental health breaks. A friend of mine was talking about her granddaughter who created her own schedule, and every half an hour or so she has a brain break. I don't know how long these brain breaks are, but it seems like a good idea. Take some time to just get a little bit of a change of scenery or something. Just give your brain a break, whatever it is that you are doing during the day right now. So we are going to talk about, obviously, the coronavirus and its effect on the world right now. We are going to talk about what happened on the stock market today. We are going to talk about the stimulus package that was passed. There's the word I'm looking for. Passed last night. Let's go ahead and start with what happened on the stock market today. The Dow advanced 1,351 points, or 6.38%, to close at 22,552. The S&P 500 gained 6.24% to 2,630. The Nasdaq climbed 5.6% to 7,797. The Dow rallied for a third straight day, despite a sharp jobless claims increase, as investors cheered the Senate passing a massive stimulus bill. The Labor Department said Thursday that U.S. unemployment claims soared to a record of 3.28 million in the last week. That number blew past the financial crisis peak of 695,000. Wow. However, investors shrugged it off as some estimates were even worse than the actual print. Citi, for example, had forecast 4 million claims were filed. Meanwhile, the Senate unanimously, I can say that, passed a $2 trillion stimulus bill to support the economy amid the outbreak. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi later said the bill would pass the House with bipartisan support. Boeing shares rallied 13.75% to lead the Dow higher once again. Meanwhile, Slack shares gained more than 10%. So what happens next? Well, Wall Street will keep an eye on Congress as the House tries to pass the economic stimulus package. Personal income and consumer sentiment numbers are also set for release on Friday. So we have that to look for tomorrow in tomorrow's news. Let's talk about that stimulus package a little bit more. So, as I mentioned before, both parties in the Senate have unanimously passed a $2 trillion economic relief package. It is the largest in modern American history. This is, of course, after years of polarization, which is encouraging. To rescue the American economy in the coronavirus crisis, Congress is on the verge of adopting the most expensive stimulus bill in U.S. history. The bill promises a $1,200 payout to millions of Americans, increased jobless aid, and grants to save small businesses from permanent closure. In a remarkable sign of overwhelming bipartisan support for the legislation, the vote was unanimous at 96-0. The legislation represents the largest emergency aid package in U.S. history and the most significant legislative action taken to address the rapidly intensifying coronavirus crisis, which is overwhelming hospitals and grinding much of the economy to a halt. It will, of course, go next to the House for a vote. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer announced Wednesday evening ahead of Senate passage that the House will convene at 9 a.m. on Friday morning to consider the relief package. The plan is to pass the bill by voice vote, a move that would allow the House to avoid forcing all members to return to Washington for a recorded roll call vote. President Donald Trump has indicated he will sign the measure and tweeted his congratulations after it cleared the Senate. The White House and Senate leaders struck a major deal early Wednesday morning on the package. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell formally announced the agreement on the Senate floor, describing it as a, quote, a wartime level of investment for our nation, end quote. Legislative text of the final deal was released Wednesday evening ahead of a final vote. Key elements of the proposal are $250 billion set aside for direct payments to individuals and families, $350 billion in small business loans, $250 billion in unemployment insurance benefits, and $500 billion in loans for distressed companies. The plan will deliver a massive infusion of financial aid into a struggling economy hard hit by job loss, with provisions to help impacted American workers and families, as well as small businesses and major industries, including airlines. Under the plan, individuals who earn $75,000 in adjusted gross income or less would get direct payments of $1,200 each, with married couples earning up to $150,000 receiving $2,400, and an additional $500 per child. The payment would scale down by income, phasing out entirely at $99,000 for singles and $198,000 for couples without children. In addition, the bill would provide a major amount of funding for hard-hit hospitals, $130 billion, as well as $150 billion for state and local governments that are cash-strapped due to their response to coronavirus. It also has a provision that would block Trump and his family, as well as other top government officials and members of Congress, from getting loans or investments from Treasury programs in the stimulus, according to Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's office. A few senators were missing from the vote due to concerns about their health amid the coronavirus outbreak, including GOP Senate Whip John Thune, who missed the vote because he was not feeling well, his communications director said in a series of tweets. The tweets do not mention coronavirus or self-quarantine, but said he returned home to South Dakota out of an abundance of caution. My goodness. A deal came together after hard-fought negotiations between congressional Republicans, Democrats, and the Trump administration. After 2 consecutive days of high-profile setbacks, with Senate Democrats blocking procedural votes on Sunday and Monday over opposition to a bill initially crafted by Senate Republicans, a deal appeared to be imminent by Tuesday morning, but was ultimately not announced until the early hours of Wednesday morning. Democrats had argued over the course of negotiations that they wanted to see more safeguards for American workers in the deal and oversight for how funding would be doled out. There was intense partisan debate over the $500 billion proposal to provide loans to distressed companies, with $50 billion in loans for passenger air carriers. Democrats initially contended that there was not enough oversight on how the money would be dispersed, but the Trump administration agreed to an oversight board and the creation of an inspector general position to review how the money is spent. There has also been controversy over the stimulus plan's unemployment benefits. On Wednesday afternoon, the package hit a last-minute snag with a group of Republican senators arguing that it would incentivize unemployment and could trigger worker shortages and supply disruptions by providing more money to some unemployed workers than they would make working. The GOP Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina said this bill pays you more not to work than if you are working. You're literally incentivizing taking people out of the workforce at a time when we need critical infrastructure supplied with workers. Republican critics secured a Wednesday evening vote on an amendment to cap unemployment benefits at 100% of the wages workers received while employed, but the amendment did not pass. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking more about the stimulus package. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast, and I will be right back. Are you looking for a podcast that gives you all of the latest news from the world of finance? Then check out the GSMC Financial News Podcast. We'll delve into the ups and downs of the stock market, changes in the economy, and news from the world of real estate and technology. From breaking news on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, or the overseas market, to updates on the bond market, if there's money to be made, we'll cover it on the GSMC Financial News Podcast. Welcome back to the GSMC Business News Podcast. For the break, we were talking about the stimulus package, and we are going to continue talking about that now. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is now emphasizing that Democrats should, quote, recognize the good, end quote, in the massive stimulus. She said, what is important is for us to recognize the good that is in the bill, appreciate it for what it does. Don't judge it for what it doesn't, because we have more bills to come. This is what she told CNN's Wolf Blitzer on the Situation Room Wednesday evening. These comments come just after Pelosi told House Democrats in a series of conference calls that she is already thinking about the substance of the fourth coronavirus relief package that Congress will have to pass to respond to the crisis, according to sources on the calls. Pelosi made it clear to members who are disappointed that the pending bill did not include enough of their priorities that they will have a chance to add those provisions in the fourth package, the sources said. The passage in the House has been made more daunting by the fact that several of its members have tested positive for coronavirus, while many more have self-quarantined after contact with infected individuals. A voice vote is a procedural move that would avoid a recorded roll call vote, which would have forced members now dispersed throughout the country to travel back to Washington to get the stimulus across the finish line. Members are further advised that due to the limited flight options, members participating in self-quarantine, and several states mandating stay-at-home orders, we expect the bill to pass by voice vote on Friday, Hoyer announced in a notice to members Wednesday evening. Pelosi had suggested on Tuesday that she was hoping to avoid bringing the full House back to Washington to vote on the package, seeking to pass it through unanimous consent instead. But any individual member can block such a move, which would make passage more difficult. That is the update then on the current stimulus package being voted on early tomorrow morning by the House, and we'll see what happens and go from there. Let's talk a little bit more about the unemployment rate and the jobless claims spiking, the unemployment benefits spiking to 4 times the largest number that had previously been recorded. If you dig further into the disastrous 3.28 million headline number, you will see a slowdown that hits some states harder than others and reveals why President Trump might be so eager to see businesses reopen in some communities sooner rather than later. Key swing states, which Trump won by the slimmest margins in 2016, showed some of the largest percentage increases in unemployment applications for the week ending March 21st. Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania each reported a jump in weekly unemployment applications that surpassed 2,300%. On a percentage basis, New Hampshire suffered the worst spike in unemployment claims, up more than 3,300% from just 641 claims the week prior to topping 21,000 weekly claims at last clip. Conversely, Utah, which hasn't been hit with as many reported cases of coronavirus as other states, only saw jobless claims rise by less than 1%. The Department of Labor release noted the coronavirus crisis and shutdown was a large cause of job losses in a number of states, including Nevada and New Jersey. Earlier this month, casinos in Las Vegas announced they would be shutting down to prevent the spread of new cases, causing some companies to let a swath of workers go. The unprecedented national spike in more Americans applying for unemployment benefits, however, reveals the magnitude of the economic shutdown at hand. It also explains why the Senate moved with record speed to approve that $2 trillion stimulus bill, and why Obama's former top economist Jason Furman said it still might not be enough. More specifically, though, for the fast-approaching election in November, it presents another wrinkle should the unemployment rate extend higher for the foreseeable future. According to Mike Ryan, UBS Global Health Management America's chief investment officer, who said, "I do think the impact of COVID-19 and the economic impacts are probably going to change everyone's playbook a bit." He said this, highlighting the fact that it could embolden the Trump administration to seek memorializing its corporate and personal tax cuts. For the most part, however, polling has revealed approving or disapproving of Trump's handling of the coronavirus crisis has thus far remained a partisan exercise. According to a Monday Monmouth University poll, about 90% of Republican voters say he's doing a good job, compared with just 20% of Democrats. The numbers overall reveal about a 50% approval rating of his job handling the outbreak so far amongst all voters. Whether that number changes as more Americans lose their job as a result of more businesses shutting down as coronavirus cases spread remains to be seen. For now, it's clear that the virus is hurting some states more than others. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. We will continue to keep you updated on the news in business and finance as it is affected by the coronavirus. And as we found out today, we have now surpassed everyone in terms of number of cases. This is not a time when we are proud to be number one. Let's just say that. We have a lot of work ahead of us. So thank you so much for joining me. Please join me for the next episode. In the meantime, stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you. You've been listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type GSMC into your favorite podcast app to find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news. Please subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's podcast.